Hi there, this is Taylor Elwood, your business wizard at Eccentric Entrepreneurs, and today we're going to be talking about why it's important to test your business processes out when you're developing your business. And this is really, this is something I cannot stress enough. And the reason I can't stress it enough is because of the mistake I'm going to share that I made and the mistake that I really see a lot of people make when it comes to their business. Now, let's be honest here. Most people, when they go into business, don't have a business plan in place, and they are in a place where they just kind of want to rush into the sexy marketing and sales tactics that people are selling online and elsewhere, in the hopes that they're going to be able to grow their business fast and quick. And, there's two problems with that. One, it's never a good idea to grow your business too fast and there is such a thing as growing your business too fast, because businesses that grow too fast rarely have time to adapt and adjust to the growth and set up the systems needed to handle the growth. So that's one reason right there you don't want your business to grow too fast. But secondly, it's simply not realistic for the most part. What I see happen a lot of times is that people really want to cut corners, and I've been guilty of this myself. I'm certainly not pointing a finger here at anyone, and not pointing a few back at myself. In fact, this entire last year, I've basically kind of been guilty of that. And this is my mistake. So I ended up signing up for a bunch of different online courses, and these courses were all about those sexy sales and marketing tactics. And the people who were sharing them would be like, yeah, I had students who would launch and they would end up making $20,000 in one launch, or they would end up becoming seven-figure entrepreneurs, or a whole bunch of other things like that. And the problem with that kind of advertisement is that it puts people's hopes up high, because then they start to think, well, wait a minute, what if I could do that? What if I could suddenly become really rich and wealthy quickly? And it doesn't work that way. And I fell for that trap. I know better, but I fell for it anyway. I'll admit, I was kind of coming at it from a place of, this is what's going to help me with my business and everything else. No, you know what it helped me do? It helped me put myself into lots of debt. And having that ton of debt is no fun, and it's illustrative, I think, of the fact that, a business without the right kind of setup in place isn't going to do well, no matter how much sexy sales and marketing tactics you have. Now, one of the problems I had is that I was taking these classes, but I wasn't really giving myself the time to fully implement them. I wasn't figuring out a way to proactively implement them into my business. And I see this happen where somebody will take a class and they kind of get overwhelmed by everything they're trying to learn. I mean, there's a lot to learn, and it can be overwhelming. And and at the same time, people are so in such a hurry to get to that end goal of having that 20K launch or that 30K launch or whatever it is that they've been sold on, that they don't really take the time to fully implement the practices. And of course, it doesn't help that the people in question offering these things don't always put that advice out there. So right now, I'm going to share with you an example of what I'm actually doing to test and build a process out, and it actually involves this very live stream. As you know, this is my second week doing this. Now, I've done live streams before, but what you might notice about this live stream is that it's a bit more well-defined and focused in terms of what I'm trying to do. As you can see in the message, I have a few different points that I'm talking about, and I have a link to my Facebook group, which is called Eccentric Entrepreneurs, that you're welcome to check out. And, I'm probably going to be changing this process around a little bit, but what I've been doing is I'd taken this course on Facebook groups, and what I've done is I've just gone back through it, and instead of trying to get through everything, I'm just focused on learning one process at a time and really learning it and implementing it successfully before moving on to the next thing. In this case, really focused on implementing and setting up a successful live stream where ideally there are comments and people are interacting, and it's at the same time helping me to grow my business in some form or manner. You know, since this is only the second week, obviously I haven't really had much in the way of people following yet, but I think as I get this process down over time, it'll help. One of the things that I've done is I've mapped out, like, what exactly do I need to be doing? Well, first of all, as an example, I'm sending out an email to my e-list, and I'm saying, hey, I'm going to be going live about this topic at this time of the day, this week, this time of the week, each week. And then what I'm doing is I'm sharing what I'm going to be going into and exploring so that people can choose whether or not they want to watch this particular live stream. And at the same time, I'm posting it in the Facebook group an hour ahead of time. I'm posting it on the Facebook business page, and I've also put it into my Messenger bot so that people who are subscribed there can come and join in on the fun. And then, of course, just the format of the writing, just setting it up so that it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to be talking about. Here's 4 points, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4. And then, of course, a link to my Facebook group because I'm trying to get more people into the Facebook group. So this is an example in this case of really just kind of taking a process that I've learned and implementing it, but really mapping out, like, what are the actions I'm supposed to be doing. And I'll say that, you know, compared to last week, there were certain things that I changed from last week that I'm doing this week with this particular process. Like last week, I didn't put a post an hour ahead of time on my Facebook business page saying, hey, guess what? This is what I'm going to be talking about. I didn't think to do that. So I was like, okay, this week I'm going to do that. And so it's an example of where I've tweaked this process with this live stream show that I'm doing in order to see what happens. And I'm going to just work on over the next month or so really getting this down as a way to help me get to where I want to go with this process. Now, one of the things that I'm doing as well, as you might note, is that I'm also testing my processes with my clients and community. In this case, I'm testing the live stream process by putting out an announcement to the different channels of social media and email marketing that I'm using in order to refine this and see who responds and what they do and how they're doing what they're doing with it. It's important to do this because it can give you some valuable feedback. You can watch and see, first of all, is this even working? And if it is working, great. What can I do to capitalize on it and build off of it? The other thing that you can really do is, or the other reason you want to test these processes out is because it gives you that live interaction. I mean, if you put something together in an isolated context, you really don't know how people are going to respond to it, react, do whatever it is they're going to do. Whereas when you're setting this up so that people can kind of go in and make informed choices, and you can kind of see what choices they're making, it gives you some context as to whether or not this is working or not and what you're going to try and do with it. Now, I'm going to say, too, that it's really important that if you're going to be testing a process out, that you don't give up right away. I mean, and this is only the second week of doing this. If I were to say, based off 2 weeks, well, I haven't had much interaction, I should just give this up, it wouldn't be realistic. You know, after this broadcast is over, I'm going to post it on my Facebook business group, and I'll post it in my email newsletter, and again, I'll see how people respond to it there. And so you know, it's not even just, oh, okay, I'm leading up to this, and here I've done this thing and nobody's done anything with it. It's, well, what will people do afterwards? And this is very important when you are setting up your business processes, that you really give them some time. And that you also keep in mind the size of your population. I mean, in this case, I have basically however many people have liked this page and maybe other people who see this. I've got my Facebook group and I've got my email list. And, you know, that's great, but let's look at it a couple months down the line when ideally that audience has grown a bit more and has gotten to a point where it's much more substantive. We may see a different result in terms of this process. So it's important to keep that in mind. The other thing is just really consistency. I've basically set it up so that I'm going to be doing this show every Tuesday at noon, barring anything that will change that particular schedule. And if that happens, I'll communicate with people and tell them. But by creating that kind of consistency, what I'm doing is I'm setting it up so that people know and expect, okay, Taylor's going to go live at this time, and if I want to go see what he's talking about this week, I should go check that out. Now, there is a simple method for implementing the business processes that you test that also lets them, and really that thing is just consistency. That simple method is basically just build it into your schedule every week and set up your activities so that you're doing it, but that it also doesn't overwhelm you. I mean, I would say that the preparation for this particular live stream has really only taken me maybe 15, 20 minutes to execute. Maybe a little bit more than that because of writing the email, but in terms of getting it set up. And then the afterwards work, writing another email and setting all that up should, again, only take, maybe a half hour, an hour at most. Not a lot of time. And it's really designed to be that way, because if it takes up too much time, then it's going to feel counterproductive. But if it's something where you're able to implement it in small focused steps, and you have a process that you've mapped out that explains what you need to do, it makes it a lot easier to implement something that you've learned. And I think something that's really important to emphasize here is that when you're doing this, you can initially work off the process that someone else has developed. Like in this case, I got this process initially from someone who had put a class together on this particular topic. But what I'm doing is I'm fleshing out and mapping out that process in more detail for myself. And so I'm changing certain things because it has to make sense to me. And the original context is not going to necessarily make sense in the same way. So it's really important to keep that in mind, that when you get a process from someone else, you have permission to rewrite that process and change it and make it into something that makes sense for you. You don't want to necessarily just go wholesale off of what other people have told you to do. You want to initially take what they've told you to do and put it into play, but then you want to start asking yourself, what can I do to improve on this? How can I change this? What can I do to make this successful for me? And there may be certain tweaks that you make that are going to make it more successful. Again, I'm going to use the example of posting on my Facebook business page. In this case, I posted an hour ahead of time. I scheduled it in, and that wasn't something I did last week, and it wasn't something that was included in the original process that the person talked about, or even what she was doing. So, it's an example of where I've taken this and I've modified it and changed it in some ways in order to make it a bit more effective. So, that's it for today. This is just I just kind of wanted to share what happens when you don't test your processes out. Like I said, in my case, it cost me a lot of money because I was just too focused on trying to get to that end goal instead of really implementing. And that isn't to say that down the line all those classes won't pay out. They probably will if I go back through them and I really take my time and give them the due diligence they deserve. But I think that, we live in a culture where it's kind of like, oh, I want to learn now, and get to where I want to be. And that doesn't always work, especially not in business and really just not in life in general. It's important to take your time and really learn the stuff and make sure you understand it. Don't be in a rush to get to the end goal. Don't make my mistake. And, just to kind of recap, we talked about testing processes and how to build that into what you're doing with your business, and how to do it consistently and make it a part of your week without having it take up too much time. All right, so that's it. And feel free to post questions, comments, thoughts in the comments, either here on the business page or in the Eccentric Entrepreneurs Facebook group. Again, there's a link there so you can join if you want to. And I will catch up with you next week. Take care and talk soon.